Good evening. Welcome to September 24th work session. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to ask Brendan Wiley and Kate Larson, who's representing the Friends of the Topeka Zoo, to provide information on the zoo's draft master plan and guest services update. Mr. Wiley.
Wonderful, thank you, Mr. Colson. And if it would please the council, I'd like to start actually with the ordinance and the guest service update, if that's okay.
Have your way. Have your way.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, I
If
appreciate
that's what
it.
you're waiting for. You just do what you want to do, okay?
All right, each of you should have a packet in front of you that looks like this. And first, we want to discuss the reasoning behind why we are proposing an ordinance change, of which you will hear the first reading tonight. I think most of you will remember that during the 2014 budget planning meetings, one of the zoo strategies to save essentially 5% of its budget in 2014 was to consolidate many of our guest service needs under Friends of the Zoo. And as we were working through that process and forming an agreement, part of that due diligence revealed that we needed to update the appropriate ordinance that applies to zoo admission and concession fees. There is a copy of the ordinance in this packet with, that if it was in color, you could see it redlined, indicating what changes are being proposed. The ordinance was already in place to have a third party operate the zoo's concession operation. Essentially, we have just added the word admissions and concessions to make this possible. While looking at the ordinance, also took the opportunity to update it to the city's current form of government. This is an ordinance that had not been reviewed in some time. I probably should have done that first thing, but it's been reviewed now. And it also allows the city, or it allows the city manager essentially to review admission fees at the zoo as part of the annual budget process. And then finally, if it fits within the city's best interest, allows the city to contract out the admission process. As a city staff, as we prepare for these meetings, it was also suggested that we briefly review again kind of the scenario under which these guest services will consolidate. And when we talk about these practices, we're talking about four specific things. We're talking about our admission process, our concession process, our event rental process. Those three all have expenses associated to the volume of guests you do in a year. They also connect with revenue in one way, shape, or form. The fourth piece that we lumped into this was the custodial services of our public spaces. Now that one also has expenses related to the volume of guests we experience over the course of the year. Unfortunately, there is no revenue associated with that piece. But by putting those four together, then that pools a group of labor or guest service staff that can be utilized in a more efficient manner to meet all four needs. And you can schedule and utilize that staff based on the zoo's attendance flow, which is typically busier in the summer, slower in the fall, winter, but even in the summertime, you're going to have days that are slower than others. So it allows that one group of labor to work under one hat with one goal, one purpose, and can be scheduled as needed. The current system of operation today, one of the things that we really identified about 2 years ago that we tried to tackle at that point is there's a number of different redundancies. And the easiest analogy that I can give is on a cold winter day, the city of Topeka and Friends of the Zoo both pay a person to man a cash handling point. Friends of the Zoo in the gift store, the city at the admission booth. And really, only about 77 days out of the year do both of those points need to operate simultaneously. When we first explored this, we tried to do it with can we share space, but we kept on running into issues of one organization not wanting or being able to handle the revenue of another organization. So although it took us some time to work through the process, we feel good at this point about the direction that we're going. We have structured an agreement that is very performance-based. I heard that phrase a lot. And one that should allow Friends of the Zoo to continue to grow its support for the zoo. At the same time, it should allow the city to better manage its expenses as it relates to the normal daily operation of the zoo. There is a 2 or 3 pages also in this packet that provide additional information behind the methodology, how it will actually break down, the cost associated in it, and a little background information about Friends of the Zoo. Before this item comes to a final reading next Tuesday evening, I do have, it's approximately a half hour long, a designated presentation towards this topic, if anyone has any desire to see it. The mayor suffered through it, but if anybody else would like to see that, we will be available at your pleasure to walk through that with you. Those are my prepared remarks about the ordinance, the guest service update. We can either take questions at the end about both topics, or I can break here.
Is this the first topic?
This is the first topic.
Okay, let's break here. Does anybody have any questions for Brendan or comments? Okay, we'll continue on then.
Okay. I would like to welcome Kate back up here now. Kate Larson, as Mr. Colson said, is the Executive Director of Friends of the Zoo. And we are very, hold on. We should have rehearsed. That's right. We are extremely excited to be here tonight to share an update on progress we've made towards a new master plan for the zoo. On Saturday night, for those of you that are available, these boards and more information will be at the zoo at an event called Zoobilee, where you can spend as much time with the images that you would like to that evening. There will be staff around to answer questions about them. And then we hope to repeat this process in a much more casual environment sometime in the first 10 days of October, either at the zoo or at the Big Gage Shelter House, where we would invite the public to start getting public feedback on what we have put together. But to give you a quick recap, over the last 3 years, a lot has happened at our zoo. 2010 was a year that there was a lot of crisis management. We were really trying to get our feet back under ourselves, so to speak. Our focus was really on correcting problems and changing the perception about the zoo. As we moved from 2010 to 2011, we really entered a time focused on strategic planning. But even then, it was very short-term strategic planning. What is the next year going to look like? What are the next 5 years going to look like? 2012 saw our focus start to shift from compliance to accrediting standards. And much of that year focused on establishing ourselves once again as a fully accredited zoo with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, bringing people back to this zoo. And as some of you may remember, a good piece of the year focused on elephants. There is a summary page also in that packet. Kind of looks like this. This is the remarks I'm going through right now. And there's some attendance numbers on that page. 2010, the zoo's attendance was 111,000 people. In 2012, our attendance hit 194,000 people. Over the last 2 years, we've talked about a 5-year goal that is reaching 250,000 people a year. That's roughly twice the population of Topeka. And when we get there, we will be able to say that every 4 years, our zoo in our community impacts over 1 million people a year. That's from a mission-based organization. That's the number that really motivates us on a daily basis. Now there's 2 other years, and they're not in order. 1989 and 1991, and I'm going to come back to that here in just a minute. The zoo's first master plan was started in 1964. And if you are familiar with the zoo, which I know actually all of you are, how do I do this? That's not.
One more.
Yes, it is. All right. This giraffe lives at a building called the Animal and Man Building and was the first official zoo building. One of the projects of that 1964 master plan, this building opened in 1966. This waterfall is found in the zoo's tropical rainforest. The second project of that first master plan, this building opened in 1973. The third project on that original master plan was the Discovering Apes building. This is our Gorilla Tiffany. The Discovering Apes building, first phase opened in 1981, and here's kind of a fun piece about that building. That gorilla tunnel was truly groundbreaking exhibit design. A lot of zoos tried to kind of copy it. The Bronx Zoo finally did copy it 20 years later. Now, really didn't need this one, but this little guy has lived in that same building since February 25th. I just love that picture.
2013.
Of 2013, that's right. The last project of that first master plan was an exhibit called Lion's Pride. And Lion's Pride is very unique in its own. When the Animal and Man building was built, it was the first hippo exhibit to ever be built without bars. When the tropical rainforest was built, that was the first geodesic dome west of the Mississippi. It won the very first exhibit design award from the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. When the Discovering Apes building was built, not only was the gorilla tunnel a first of its kind, orangutans, who are arboreal apes, it was the first exhibit where you walked in and you viewed them from a second-story level, very much designed to get you to understand that animal's natural history. The Lion's Pride exhibit, I frequently tell people, is my favorite exhibit at our zoo because of how well it was done. It's a simple concept that was detailed out with dramatic outcomes. And the interesting thing is, this zoo historically took an approach that was not about what we did. When we built that gorilla exhibit, there were a number of zoos that were building gorilla exhibits. So it wasn't what we did, it was how we did it that really started to distinguish this zoo from others. Now, last year, I mentioned this and that. And as we went down the road of what is our future going to look like as it relates to elephants? I remember it had to have been a February evening at the zoo, Councilman Alcala, and he asked, well, how much would it cost to take your elephant exhibit all the way down to 10th Street? And didn't have an answer for him. But the next day, we were asking the question, could a larger elephant exhibit fit within our zoo fence? And what we were able to learn, and what we discussed last fall, is that yes, it could. And when you know that your facility at least has the footprint, then a vision can start to develop around the dream. And now, using that as the cue, once we knew that yes, there could be a bigger future for elephants at our zoo, we then had to ask the question, what would the zoo start to look like? And that's when Friends of the Zoo offered to pay for a consultant to come in and work with us on the development of a master plan. And that is what we would like to share with you tonight. And we're going to bounce back and forth between some images. I'm going to stay with the Elmo and hopefully point to the same picture that Kate is pointing to up there so that people at home can see this. You all will have your choice of which image you want to look at. But if you notice, the first thing about this exhibit, or I'm sorry, this image, is that it is overlaid onto a current existing map. During my first probably 18 months here, I was asked a number of times about, well, are you going to make the zoo bigger? Are we going to, that question, are we going to go down to 10th Street? My answer was typically, I think we have enough work to do within our fenced area before we start looking beyond. A statistic I frequently use is Zoo Atlanta, and I use that zoo because most people have heard about it. It sits on 40 acres, has 3,000 animals. We sit on 32 acres and have right around 300 animals. So there is plenty of opportunity for us to develop the space that we already have. This plan takes an approach that is frequently referred to as a zoogeographic approach. And what that simply means is it lays animals and animal exhibits from like parts of the world next to each other. So you start to see the development of an African exhibit, of an Asian exhibit, of a North American exhibit. We did decide to leave the tropical rainforest independent by itself, and we also identified one other zone for improvement, and that is our front entry. Now, don't lose this picture, but we're going to change this board for a minute. If you were to drive up to the zoo today, what you would be greeted by is bars. And that's not necessarily the image that we want to convey today. We want to be known very much as an environmentally minded conservation organization that has great stake in the education of this community. The image that you're seeing tries to say several things. And the first thing that it says is that your animal experience begins actually before you enter the zoo. This is shown in an otter exhibit right up front that a person would not have to pay admission to get to. This has been a strategy that has been used in a number of other communities, especially communities that have publicly funded zoos, to make part of it free. It also features a guest service point on the right, a gift store opportunity on the left, both of which can be accessed without having to come into the zoo. The style of architecture that's chosen up here was meant to do two different things. One is we are the zoo in the capital city, and we want to reflect that a little bit. The other statement that we wanted to make with the glass is that we are a very transparent organization. We are this community zoo in this capital city, and we fully understand that expectation. Immediately behind the otters is placed a gibbon exhibit, some sort of noisy animal, so that when people pull into that parking lot, before you ever take 2 steps away from your car, you know where you are. Now, the ticketing point is actually just beyond what this image shows. It does funnel down, give people an opportunity to purchase a ticket to enter the zoo. But when you are greeted as a guest, whether you're from this community or from outside it, it is intended to be a very welcoming, a very inviting, very transparent about the experience that you are about to engage in. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Okay, we're going to we put the big plan back up. We don't have all the boards just yet. The picture that I have up on the TV, at the bottom it says Africa, entry otter, and Asia. I talked about a zone geographic or a zoogeographic plan. And these are 3 of the key zones that we are suggesting need to be developed for an extended life at the zoo. The one on the bottom left is the entry zone. And when this zone is fully developed, it would not only rework the entry, it would rework the gift experience, the food experience, by moving actually more of a, instead of a concession stand, a restaurant out over the pond. But it would also funnel people into the center of the zoo. The little, if you can see the globe type experience there are 3 kind of main hubs in this plan, and we're going to use the word plaza here in just a minute. The picture on the right, bottom right, depicts an Asian experience. As we developed this plan, we looked at our infrastructure, we looked at our animal collection, we looked at our history, we talked to stakeholders, and one of the things that we wanted to really address is the situation that we currently face today with our gorilla program. This plan currently, in its draft form, does not have a gorilla experience in it. Now, it is one of the key parts of our history, but standards have changed so much since that building was built that we did not feel like we could fairly address what they need around the space where Tiffany the gorilla currently lives. And in fact, this plan would recommend that we defer the need of a new gorilla exhibit about 20 years down the road. The reality with gorillas is over the last 20 years, they are doing extremely well in their captive population. Today, we work with a lot of animals that aren't doing nearly as well, orangutans being one of them. This Asian section pulls on that orangutan need, but adds other Asian experiences around it with different types of primates, snow leopards, centering the tiger experience there. Now the piece at the top, the African piece, and why don't you go ahead and go to the next one now. The Africa piece is the one that has been detailed the most. And quite honestly, that was because of the elephant situation that we went through. We had to study our elephant dilemma. On the elephant piece itself is again meant to represent some of those same standards that we talked about with our entry. The African Plaza that you see depicted in the top picture would be another place for guests to congregate for special event rentals. From a business perspective, that's where you would put that child play, bathroom, point of retail, or point of sale. But it's a very engaging, inviting, interactive experience where you can view animals from multiple levels. Children could potentially play in the treetops at the same time as elephants are down below. The bottom left corner, the area specifically mentioned Elephant Bridge, or labeled Elephant Bridge. When we tried to answer the question that Councilman Alcala asked, how much would it cost to take your elephant exhibit all the way down to 10th Street? We came up with an answer, and the answer was $500 a foot. That is what it costs to build your cheapest elephant fence. The issue is, that's not what this community wants. This zoo wasn't built on doing things as cheaply as we could. It wasn't built on what we did, it was built on how we did it. When those projects, like the Animal and Man building, the Rainforest, the Discovering Apes building, they were successful because they were innovative, because they were sources of pride in this community. This bottom left-hand picture, the Elephant Bridge, shows what one opportunity could be like for a guest at this zoo to literally stand in between a bull and cow elephant and experience the differences with minimal perceived barrier. Now that elephant containment piece right there is a little bit more than $500 a foot, but the impact that it could have, not only for a guest experience, but what it would say about this zoo is much larger. The picture on the bottom right shows what it could look like inside our elephant barn. Today, guests don't have access inside our barn, and that is one thing we would definitely like to change. Again, being that transparent zoo, that transparent program. We're going to hop back now to the big picture, and I want to finish talking quickly about the elephant experience that this would suggest, but also about the African experience as a whole. When you enter the zoo, the building that you would see right in front of you is the Animal and Man building. That building would stay and still be the heart of the zoo in the future, just as it is today. The Animal and Man building would change dramatically, though. One of the things that we would do is we would move the giraffe to a new addition onto that building. Hippos would have to move into a newly designed, up-to-date space in that building, and then we would approximately double the size of the space for our elephants. I don't know if Kate, if you can kind of circle what is there today. Yeah, this is what's there today, and this is the current outdoor exhibit today. This exhibit would be approximately 7 times larger and would literally loop around the back side of the zoo. But what you can see is it only pushes outside of our current fence just a little bit. The other dynamic about how this could lay out is we're talking about giving elephants a lot more space. And sometimes when zoos do that, they create a lot of empty space. But the way our zoo is set up today is, and if you can kind of trace the African trail, you can go down to the end of the elephant exhibit, you can go back to the African Plaza, but at the same time, you've got exhibits on both sides of you now. So if the elephants are enjoying a different space in their habitat, you still have animals literally right next to you. Now, as you wind up your elephant experience, you come to a new giraffe experience, which is where the zoo's current children's zoo is today. This giraffe experience, the inside holding for the giraffe would be brought to current standard, and this is also enough space to include several other species out there as well. And if we want to stay on this plan for a minute, as you come out of the African experience, you come through, again, interior of the barn, past the giraffe, past the hippo, you exit the animal and man building again, and if you go towards the rainforest, we have studied the rainforest. 2 years ago, we replaced the roof. We know the roof is good for at least another 30 years, probably 40. The inside, though, for lack of a better word, is tired. The concrete looks old. There's newer technology. We did study that space in terms of being able to update it. And the very last page of your pretty pictures shows what that could start to look like. Now, I mentioned the plaza concept. And if you want to go ahead, what we have tried to do through this study is continue the development of this zoo in a way that is user-friendly, that is inviting. One of the things that we hear from guests routinely is they like the size of our zoo, that it's an easy-to-use zoo, it's friendly. One of the words that we've heard that we like the most is it's embraceable. And we tried to continue that concept by giving places in the zoo for people to enjoy that interactive experience. Whether it's a almost life-size children's game in our World Plaza, whether it's the climbing structure in the African Plaza, or as you leave the rainforest heading towards the North American section of our zoo, a butterfly plaza that might also be a spray park. One of the things that research has shown about zoos is that people tend to feel safe inside a zoo and will enjoy this type of opportunity there. Now, I'm going to wrap up very quickly. We tried to accomplish 3 different things, really, with beginning this analysis. And the first is simply, now that we're past some of the crisis problems, and now that we're starting to look towards the future, how are we going to ensure that this zoo continues to live for another 30 to 50 years? The second big objective that we were trying to do was take care of our infrastructure. I mentioned some years, 1966, 73, 81, 89. Some of our things are old, but we can give them new life. We can create new experiences out of them. The heart of the zoo is here. The third thing is, how are we going to continue to develop the zoo based on the world-class approach that built it from the ground up? And we think we are getting to some of those points in this plan. I had an information sheet that had attendance levels on it. There were 2 years that were blank. 1989, this zoo's attendance, thanks, In 1989, this zoo's attendance was 280,000 people. In 1991, it was 288,000 people. That was in an era when the zoo was looking towards its future, executing a master plan, striving to move forward as the world-famous Topeka Zoo. That is that direction that we are trying to return to. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Brendan?
Just real quick, Brendan. I had forgotten to do my Friends of the Zoo, and I just got on there, and I was really surprised that the dues were $50 for a family membership. What has the due structure been, and have you looked at increasing the dues or not?
Wow, a lot of questions there. The fee structure has typically been 2.5 times the cost of a family of 4 visiting. So our adult is $5.75, child $4.25. That's $10. Family of 4 is $20 times 2.5. There's your family membership value. We have done a number of different studies on where our fees are comparable to other zoos around us. Many markets use the cost of a movie theater ticket and try to be right around there or just under. But we also know that there are those in this community that can't afford to use our zoo. That is a challenge. One of the things that this ordinance change that we talked about tonight allows is that now we can talk about this as a function of budget or a function of service. And not sure. Well, I'll just stop there. So, well, thank you.
Are there any questions or concerns or comments? Mr. Mayor?
Just very quickly, would you like to comment on how you see the next steps? How,
Yes,
how soon do
I
we
would
make
love
our
to.
reservations for the new zoo, right?
We are in first, we had to ask that question. If as a community we said we're behind elephants, and if we have shown that elephants can fit, what does that other vision look like? We need to engage more of our community and get feedback on these concepts. We wanted you all to get that opportunity first. The next logical question is, well, what does it cost? And we don't know that yet. The only thing that we have an idea of is the elephant piece. But we know that, whatever that price tag is on the final picture that we move forward with, it's probably not a CIP plan. It is probably some sort of public-private initiative. And from that perspective, with Friends of the Zoo, we are always working towards that friend raising, so that when we are ready, we can engage people of the community to move forward with.
Thank you.
Brendan, you never cease to amaze me. You've jumped on board, and you've just been in the outfield the whole time you've been here. And I'm a frequent visitor of the zoo. But in your plan, do you have anywhere for our traveling exhibits? Will you continue? Because I've seen you kind of point out everything else.
We do, and it's actually not depicted on there.
Okay.
But there is a space right here that was reserved for that type of opportunity. Another thing I should probably two things I should say as I see the clock. One is a sincere thanks to Friends of the Zoo for making this possible, at least even the conversation, the plan. But, well, now I forgot the other. Oh, I do remember. Based on your question, is there a space for a traveling exhibit? We mentioned a master plan that was identified in 1964. First project opened in 1966. Last project was built in 1989. This may easily represent 20 years worth of work, sprinkled with other opportunities to keep people coming back, whether it's traveling exhibits or additional activities. This would not happen overnight.
Any other questions or concerns before we wrap up? If not, we thank you. We thank you for your hard work. We thank you, Friends of the Zoo, for their hard work, and we look for good things to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to make just one really quick comment in pertaining to a statement that was made at the end of last week's meeting. Councilmember dealing with PBC. Councilmember Schmidt had asked a question about whether we had used the pilot for any other programs, and City Attorney Sublette had made a statement that, to the best of his knowledge, he wasn't aware of that. I just wanted to clarify that there was an agreement after the building was built before the 2002, but after 2002, we were collecting $25,000 a year on the SRS building. It wasn't meant to be intentionally misleading. It was just an incorrect statement, so I just wanted to clarify that today. I don't think it makes any difference on what we talked about, but I wanted to bring that forward.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. Okay. No further questions. This concludes our work session.
The council meeting will come to order. If you would please rise and give your attention to Councilmember Schmidt for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would ask that we please take a moment of silence. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no proclamations or presentations, so we will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Walgas.
Here.
Ms. Hiller.
Here.
Mr. Campos.
Here.
Ms. Ortiz. Ms. Everhart.
Here.
Ms. De La Isa.
Here.
Mr. Manspeaker.
Here.
Ms. Schwartz. Here. Mr. Schmidt.
Here.
And Mr. Harmon.
And prior to the reading of the consent agenda, I believe the city manager has an item there to handle.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I would like to ask us to withdraw or to pull item number 4J. That claim has been settled, so there's no need to take action on that. I would also like to make a request prior to the beginning of the meeting, outside of the consent agenda, if that's appropriate, that we also pull off of the agenda item 7B, the resolution pertaining to the Riverfront Park. I'd like to ask for more time for us to engage in some conversations with others involved in the project, including the county and the Railroad Heritage Foundation.
Okay. Unless there are objections from the council, we will pull item J from the consent agenda, and we will also pull item 7B from new business. No objections. There I see none. The clerk will read the consent agenda.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Mary Carter to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for an unexpired term ending January 31, 2015. B is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Teresa Packard to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a term ending September 30, 2015. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Sherry McGowan to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a term ending September 30, 2015. D is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Mary Jo Mastriani to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a term ending September 30, 2015. E is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Don Moses to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a term ending September 30, 2015. F is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Carrie Strahler to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a term ending September 30, 2015. G is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Carrie Ridley to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a term ending September 30, 2015. H is a resolution introduced by Councilmember John Campos II granting Tatsiani Society an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at sea concerning noise prohibitions. I is a resolution introduced by Councilmember John Campos II granting April Irvin an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at sea concerning noise prohibitions. J has been withdrawn. K is a denial of claim by Philip Cheatham seeking $800 million in damages for alleged constitutional violations. L is denial of claim by Milton Lee seeking $200 million in damages for alleged constitutional violations and the infliction of mental harms. M is denial of claim by Michelle and Melissa Eklund in the amount of $6,854.51 for alleged damage to their property due to a water main break located near 307 Southwest Emwood, and are minutes of the regular meeting of September 17, 2013. And there are 3 open after midnight license applications for consideration.
Okay, council members, that is the consent agenda. What is your pleasure? Ms. Elisa moves approval of the consent agenda. Mr. Schmidt seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
Mr. Campos and Ms. Ortiz. Hold on. We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. And if you will give me a minute, I would like to introduce, we have a large number of appointees tonight, and it's particularly gratifying that we have a number of people that are willing to serve, and particularly with the ADA Advisory Council. That, as you know, took us a while to put the group together, and a number of them are here tonight. I know they all are not. Marie Carter, if you would stand, please, and we'll introduce. I know that Teresa Packard could not attend. Sherry McGowan, thank you. Mary Jo Mastriani, Don Moses. That's good. Carrie Strahler. I don't know that she is not here. Okay, these people are all going on to the ADA Advisory Council. Thank you very much for your service, and we'll join Carrie Ridley is here, who is going on the Sustainability Advisory Board. Let's give these people a round of applause. We appreciate your service. Thank you for doing that. Okay, next we will go to item 5A, a public hearing and ordinance for those reading.
A is a public hearing in conjunction with vacation request V13RA1 by Reese's Fine Food requesting to vacate a platted access restriction located along the east property line of 3167 Southeast 10th Avenue, City of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas, and an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson relating to the vacation of a platted access restriction on the east line of property at 3167 Southeast 10th Avenue, City of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas. Final reading.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Fyander, Planning Director, to present information on this item and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening. This vacation before you tonight is a request at Reese's. They are requesting a removal of a restricted access designation along Southeast Wittenberg Road. It's at their plant, which is at Southeast 10th and Southeast Wittenberg Road, just north of I-70. The access was restricted at the time that the plant was developed in 1994, and it was done so because I think there was some residential zoning across the street at the time. This is not a completed street. It's actually a half-completed street. The request will help them with their circulation at their facility, allow some access to Wittenberg Road that they don't currently have in a dead-end parking lot. There were really no policy issues or service issues identified by staff, so we do recommend approval of the ordinance and ask for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a public hearing that I will announce that the public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to speak on this ordinance. Seeing none, we will then close the public hearing. Now, council members, if you have questions. Mrs. Ortiz?
Motion to close the public hearing and adopt the ordinance.
It's been moved to close the public hearing and to adopt the ordinance. Mr. Campos seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. We go to unfinished business, item 6A, temporary signs.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson amending City of Topeka Code Sections 1810-010, 1810-020, 1815-030, and 1850-060, 1825-060, 1825-220, 1825-230, and 1825-260, specifically repealing said original sections, as well as creating section 1825-215, all concerning the regulation of temporary signs, final reading.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is coming back to us. It was remanded to the Planning Commission from the meeting of July 16th, 2013. Approval would clarify definitions and standards for temporary signs that were originally established in 2007. I know there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of interest amongst the community. I'd like to ask Mr. Fyander, Planning Director, to present information on this and stand for questions.
Thank you again. As was mentioned, this was before you a few months ago with the remand back to the Planning Commission. Real briefly, to refresh your memory, the intent of updating the temporary sign regulations was to really make them clearer, bring clarity to the users of those regulations as well as to staff to help enforce those. And with that, not necessarily change the intent of any size or placement standards that we established back in 2007. So with the remand back to the Planning Commission, there was three things you wanted them to look at. Number one was contractor signs, which we are now calling property improvement signs. Those are signs that are put up during a construction or improvement event on the property. Number two was allowance of official flags. This was something that was taken out. We've reinserted back the language to allow official flags of government entities, churches, businesses, nonprofits, and charitable firms. And then lastly, the third thing was to look at an exception to the height limit for temporary signs to allow feather flags as they've come to be known, and also look at downtown, an exception for downtown, allowing those downtown. If you recall, basically, there's a box that we've created size-wise in commercial and residential districts for temporary signs. We did not change that or propose to change that. It's a 6-foot height, 32 square foot size limitation in commercial areas, and it's 4 foot high and 6 square feet in residential. That did not change. It was just to clarify, as it came back to the Planning Commission, they looked at all three of those items that were asked for consideration, and they did make a recommendation of approval on the first two. So we've included property improvement or contractor signs now to be allowed during the event and to be removed at the end of the event. The official flags insertion was reinserted back into the ordinance. That was recommended for approval. The third thing with the feather flags, they did not recommend for approval as an exception to the code. There are several reasons in their discussion. I'll try to summarize those real briefly. As I mentioned, it did not meet the original intent of the code update, which was to relatively keep our standards intact that were established. We have an expectation of what the size is allowed and how big they should be. This type of sign that came along did not fit within that prescribed box. In essence, by allowing those exceptions, it will lead to a greater number of temporary signs, larger temporary signs, potentially down the road as well. And that was one of the things I think was the objectives of having the regulations, is to minimize the proliferation of temporary signs above a certain size and try to help make our Topeka more attractive by doing that. From my standpoint, in terms of enforcement of the regulations, it does always help to have uniform regulations. Exceptions in the case of signs do make it more difficult and challenging for us to have self-enforcement, which is really what we run into with signs, temporary signs. We don't ever take a temporary sign violation to court because it usually just is a matter of education and helping the businesses and the users understand what the regulations are, and then it gets fixed. Planning Commission looked at allowing exceptions to downtown. Some of the comments were that these types of signs are more car-oriented. Downtown is more pedestrian-oriented, and we want it to be more pedestrian-oriented with the investment being made there. So this would not benefit downtown, they believe, from cluttering the area with more signs, temporary signs. The cities that we researched, most of them do not allow them. The majority of them don't. One recent example we found in Lincoln, another capital city to the north. They started enforcing these in the spring after their governing body ran into this issue as well. So that pretty much summarizes what this was brought to the Planning Commission in July and August. Their recommendation back to you by a vote of 8-1 was to make the first two changes in your request for consideration, which is the contractor signs and the official flags, but to not include exceptions to the feather flags. So I stand for any
Okay,
questions.
thank you. And we have 3 persons signed up to make public comment. But council members, I think if you have questions specifically about the report back from the Planning Commission that Mr. Finder just made, would you like to, if you have any questions to him at this point on that process, and then we'll have the public comment. Mrs. Heller.
Well, I am the person who was, at least stated concerns about it, one of the people that stated concerns last time, and I do continue to have concerns with what we're looking at. Both the concern about the narrow focus on the one item that the commission focused on, but also the overall situation that we have out on the street. So I did want to ask a few questions, and I do have some proposals with me, and I can save them till after comment or whatever you suggest. I do, Mr. Fyander, appreciate the huge task before you. We've talked about this sign issue before, and if I recall correctly, you have said we have a lot of other work to do on that sign ordinance. Is that a correct statement?
The entire code, yes. The sign code is really probably a year-long, well, this did take a year, didn't it? So this is a year-long plus to do more of a update to our sign code, yeah.
Could you name a few of the other issues that you see as problems with the sign code?
I think there's policy issues that this community needs to look into to see if this is what they want to continue. We have a very liberal sign ordinance. You look at most other communities, and they do not allow the size and the types of signs that we allow. When we get developers or sign companies come to us for permits, they are pretty well shocked that we don't really have much regulations when it comes to signs. So that's the main policy issue, and I think from a technical standpoint, we do have from time to time, we find holes in our ordinance, some holes. I would define those as that where we could tighten things up. But overall, it's more of a policy of how we want to have signs in this community.
As I read the ordinance again to prepare for this evening, one of the complaints people have had about why can't we have the feather flags is we have all this other stuff and it's okay. So I want to double check on some of those things. It appears we have banners on walls and fences all over town. It appears in my rereading of the ordinance before us that banners on fences were not allowed before and still are not allowed by this ordinance. Is that so?
That is correct.
So did the planning commission discuss this? Did you discuss this issue as you looked at updates? I didn't
We did.
recall seeing it.
Well, we did approach, banners were clarified in the ordinance to make sure that, again, the big change back 5, 6 years ago was to take banners off the street and put them up on the walls and off of fences. That was the major change to the image of our streets in our community. So we looked at the percentage of there's a 25% limitation on banners on the side of a wall, face of a building. We did not change that. So when I said we didn't change the standards, we kept that standard intact. We did not change the banner standard at all in this update.
So what's the intent of dealing with banners on fences?
Those are not legal. Those would have to be enforced.
They haven't been before, so that's why
Oh,
I'm
no,
asking.
well, I'm sorry.
Oh, they don't appear to have been. There are lots of them. Okay. The proposal also, in the past, the timeframe for temporary signs indicated that they could be up for, the term was the duration of the event. That was changed in this proposal to 30 days. Can you, was that specifically discussed, and can you explain why?
Sure. When we went out to enforce a special event duration, that was really open to interpretation. I think our zoning inspector worked with the businesses, but there was no clear cutoff in terms of how many days is a special event, what is a special event for that matter. And so really, it was just a matter of negotiating that out and using some common sense. The update tries to clarify, we don't care what type of event it is. Here's the typical duration that is allowed under a typical special event, 30 days. In the past, we were looking at grand openings, for instance, as a special event. But how long is a grand opening? So we tried to clarify that. So we allow up to two separate occurrences, 30 days each, in this update.
I will have a suggestion about that later. My concern is that, for instance, many events advertise at least 30 to 60 days in advance and then through the event. I think of the Aaron Douglas Art Fair, for instance, that I just did, which has always been legal before, but when that art fair opens its call for artists at the end of March, the signs go up in the corners of 12th and Lane and 12th and Washburn. Then part of that sign comes down in July when the call for artists is over. The fair is in September, and the signs go down the day after the fair. That's always been fine with people, and it was legal before. It would not be anymore. Another example, and there are many, but just even a Vacation Bible School, often a church will put the sign up a month before, and Vacation Bible School may run for a month in the summer. Simple things like that I think the 30 days might be a good alternative if it looks open-ended, but that we need to be conscious that many events really do have lifespans that are more than 30 days. I have one last question, if I may.
Okay.
It appears to me in the language of the beginning part of the ordinance that, when you look around town in terms of feather flags, most of them are not short-term temporary, they're up long-term. People have them in front of their businesses all the time. And it would appear to me that they actually are allowable in the definition of ground sign in the part of our ordinance for long-term signs where you have it inspected and get a permit. Was that discussed?
Whether they would be allowed under ground signs?
Yes. Says they have
yeah.
to be affixed to the ground and they can be made out of metal or fabric or, I don't know, there's a list.
Well, the definition of a freestanding sign under the temporary code is it's self-supportive
Understood.
and temporary in nature and made of cloth, vinyl, similar material. So that would not qualify as a ground sign when we have that particular differentiation. But that, we worked very close with legal on this, so I'm standing here giving you my best answers. There's the sign code goes way farther and deeper than just probably our discussion that's happening right now. And so you're aware of that, I know.
That's why I went around. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Everhart?
Thank you. I think I also have a concern with some of these changes, and I after the discussion last time, I too went around and looked some in my district on the feather flag issue. And I think there's a lot of them out there that they have no idea that you're making it illegal. I mean, I guess my concern, and I don't know if you can answer this question, is I have a manufactured housing home, which is residential, but yet business too, because they rent and they sell, and I have one of those in my district, and they have feather flags, and they have them pretty much all the time. And they're on poles, and I too share what Councilwoman Hiller says. If I were to look at that sign, I'd think, it looks real nice, there's nothing, but it has words and it has, some stuff, but it would probably could be identified under both. It's temporary, which would make it illegal, but it's in the ground, maybe it's not illegal. Do you see that presenting a problem? Because I don't want people who are not at all aware that this is taking place to next week or sometime whenever this takes effect to find out that things that they have put there and have had there long term are now illegal.
Yeah, the whole intent here was to address a specific type of sign, or not actually address that specific type of sign by saying, if it's temporary, then it needs to fit this particular standard that we've set. What you've described may or may, and I'm not sure exactly which property you're talking about, but if in the picture in my mind is those are permanent poles. They are not temporary poles. And so that is a distinguishing feature. The temporary signs are things you or I guess me, could take out of the ground, put in the ground, and take back inside at night. If this is a flagpole with a flag on it, that's not what this addresses.
No, they're not. They're in the ground, and they go up the whole thing of the pole, and I think they could. I might not be able to pull it out of the ground, but I'm sure somebody else could. So that's why I don't know. See, I think that's the problem that I guess I am concerned about is how, it doesn't appear to me that it is that clear where they're gonna fall. And that bothers me, but I won't ask any more questions for now because I know we have people, but thank you.
Sure.
Just one of the, perhaps where this, if you could address, how did this issue arise? I mean, it sounds like, did somebody just come out, we're against feather flags and we want to go get them? Or is there is support out there, I would assume, to get rid of them among some people?
Well, the issue arose when we tried to enforce our sign code, it's quite simply. Our zoning inspector went out to cite when they started popping up, a feather flag that was over 6 feet high. In consultation with legal, we were advised that we needed to change our sign code. That's where we're here tonight. For the past year, we've been trying to clarify our definitions and make it easier, not harder, for people to understand. So that has been the intent all along, and we would, but that's where it came from.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't we go to our persons who have signed up for public comment. The first is Gary Carey.
Commissioners, City Manager. My name is Gary Carey. I own a private business downtown, and I represent the Downtown Merchants Association Advertising. I came before you a couple months ago about this. The request was for a set-aside district downtown to allow feather flags. We are very concerned about the next 2 years. of how street construction is going to affect our business. We're also concerned about our signage. We looked at seeing feather flags not as a detriment, but as an attribute to attract attention to the downtown district. We work very hard with organizations, sponsorship of events downtown. I passed out a packet. I don't know if all of you got it today. We presented this to the Planning Commission, and it consisted of over 70 business owners downtown. Most of them are small business owners that can't afford large advertising expenses. This was virtually ignored. Through procedures, myself or Vince Fry with DTI wasn't given an opportunity to question this ordinance or why. But I think when you get about 80% of downtown merchants saying, we want an exception, I think it should be listened to. I've driven the streets too. I did it again this morning in almost all of the city. The feather flags I've seen, some are deteriorated and need to be controlled. I'm not objecting to the control of them. I'm objecting to who can use them, when, and how. And I look at, this is speaking as a personal citizen. When I look at an ordinance and I see exceptions for certain organizations, including the government that you represent, exempt from an ordinance, I find it sort of disturbing that it's okay for the government, but not okay for the citizens we represent. Here again, I'm going to stress the urgency of our downtown merchants, that we're facing 2 years of construction. At best, I've watched 6th Street construction, I've watched other construction. Businesses are interrupted. We're looking for an effective way to say, we're still open, we're here. And that's meant warning, so I'm going to conclude at this point. But I do urge the council to either consider a set aside for the downtown district or to relook at the use of the feather flag ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harry, for your comments. The second person to speak is Kelly Kimball.
Hi, I'm Kelly Kimball, and this is Leanne Wilbur, the other one that signed up. You get a 2-for-1 with us right now. Together, we manage the H&R Block offices here in Topeka. We have 7 altogether, and 1 is downtown. First, I would like to say the purpose of having any signs or signage is to attract business. The purpose of attracting business is to be successful and make money. I've always lived in Topeka. I love Topeka, never wanted to live anywhere else. I want the best for all of us here. I don't want my kids to have to work anywhere else and me travel. I would love to be able to place our feather banners up at our offices where the landlords allow them. I would also like to be able to place yard signs up as well. Feather banners and yard signs really are an effective tool for attracting customers. Several years ago, I contacted Galen Epke, City of Topeka zoning inspector, inquiring about a permit for them, and was told after the second call, a year later that I made, that if she saw any of our signs up, she would find me since we had spoken. The whole purpose of the call was, I figured there was a permit to buy. Our owner wanted us to buy the permit so we could put up the signs. This was about the time feather banners were becoming very popular. I asked her why everywhere I drive in Topeka I see signs. Her response was that she is only one person and can't be everywhere. Last tax season, I was attending a business luncheon in which Jim Colson, the city manager, spoke. Afterwards, I approached him about the sign ordinances, and I was told by and what I was told by Ms. Epke. He told me his personal opinion was he didn't like feather banners. My response was his personal opinion about signage shouldn't be in play. It's what is best for the businesses as we try and grow Topeka. I went ahead and put up some yard signs that afternoon, since we are supposed to be able to have them up for a special event once a year, is what I was told by Ms. Epke. With our business, it's generally about tax class or, a special we're running. We have an office open year-round, but all of our offices are open, a short window of the year. We don't have anybody dancing, so we rely on signage. Within 2 days, I received a notice from Ms. Epke telling me I had 30 days to remove them or be fined $50 per sign. Of course, I had to drive past countless other signs and feather banners throughout the city to remove our signs. While most business owners and managers would agree that while some of the signs and feather banners are old, faded, tattered, or even with the new ones, if there are too many, can look trashy, most are in good shape and doing their job, attracting customers. They would also agree they would like to see an ordinance that does allow businesses to advertise with feather banners and yard signs if they are professional and presentable in condition. Permits are issued for the Boyles type signs. Why not for other types of signage? We're willing to purchase a permit if one is there. I do agree with Ms. Epke that if she is only one person, how can she monitor the entire city? Allowing signs and feather banners to be placed would allow her to focus on other areas of her job. The only one she would need to deal with is if there was someone complained about the appearance or placement of a sign or a feather banner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Now, Leanne Wilbur, do you wish to speak?
No, I helped her.
Okay, you second what has just been said, correct? All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
We
you
do
very
everything
much.
together, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we have a ordinance before us to handle. Is there further discussion by the council? Do you have plans how you wish to handle this? Mrs. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question for Bill. I noticed that Brett Klossman, who I've known since he was about 8 years old, voted against this at the Planning Commission meeting. In reading the minutes, I can't really quite understand, all of the negative that he brought out. He didn't believe that allowing them in the ordinance states that neighbors are okay with people having them. So I guess maybe that's a question of, have there been complaints? I mean, I know you
Yes.
sent somebody out, but is this an issue that is so broad that we are getting complaints from citizens, other businesses? And I've looked at this list of my eye doctor's on there. So when you get personal, it's like, well, maybe there is something wrong with all of this.
Well, we do get complaints. That's basically how our whole zoning inspection system works with one person, is we go out, it's kind of complaint driven. As far as temporary signs go, though, it's a constant education process. And so there is more proactive work in that regard to go out and actually drive the corridors and bring those that are potentially violation to the business's attention. So it is a constant reinforcement of it. But no, we do get complaints, and that's usually, in fact, that's where the one I spoke to a year ago started. There was a complaint. So but it is more of one of our proactive approaches we do take to go out there and actually look. But with one person in 60 square miles, that is probably the one thing that we do try and be more proactive in.
Mrs. Everhart.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I can't support this. I recognize that from the discussion that there may be some concerns and that maybe our sign regulations do need to be updated or reviewed, but I just don't think this addresses it. So I'm not going to support it because I really do think there are going to be a number of people who no one's complained about, but are going to now find themselves, doing something illegal, and that disturbs me. It also disturbs me that, you know, the things I hear in my district, if we want to fix problems, I don't get any calls about a sign. I get calls about weeds, grass, buildings that need to be demolished. I mean, you know, we haven't addressed our code enforcement issues, and so I just can't see the urgency for doing this, which may in fact cause more problems with some of our businesses or citizens. So I can't support it, but I do understand, you know, what brought you to thinking this was necessary.
Mrs. Hiller?
Well, I've got a packet that I'll send both ways, and I would encourage everybody to start on about the third page of it with some photos. And I just got my cell phone out as I went about my day and got photos. And I would suggest, as we look through these, on the first 3 pages of photos, those are all banners or signs that are either legal, they're certainly all up, they're legal, or they're simply been overlooked. We just talked about the banners, which is the first one, and apparently they're not legal, or they won't be soon, or they never have been, but they're going to start enforcing it, and they're all over town. The next one is a wrapped vehicle. There are wrapped vehicles all over town. They're not even addressed in our ordinance. The next one is in front of a tire place, and it's a wrapped barrel. It's not covered by the ordinance. They've had it out there. It helps them get business. The next one is a bus bench. We are apparently, I don't know, they're either legal or, though I don't think we're collecting our sign fees for them. The next one is banners. Our sign code talks about how big a sign can be, but it doesn't say how many you can have on one building. So there are 4 banners on this particular apartment building. And the next one is a business that has signs outside the windows, on the back wall, up on top. All of that, as far as I know, is legal according to the ordinance that we're looking at. Then the next one is a Walgreens that's got a wrap around a pole as well as a small flu shot sign. Those, I assume, are legal, but we see those all over when people are in flu shot season and so on. That looks remarkably similar to a feather flag, I would have to say. And then the last one on that second page is one of those high ones that Dillon's has in their parking lots in their big superstores and all the car lots. And the next one shows a sample of car lots. There are flags all over. Most of them have words on them, all over town. And the people that emailed me said they thought they were festive and they liked them. And without me being specific, the last 2, one is a big banner that's all the way down the side of a building at 9th and Kansas, and that is apparently legal. There's one on each side of the building. And last but not least is the banners that hang on light poles that don't appear to be covered by our ordinance at all. I would suggest that the reason that the people who have the feather flags call or take the time of our staff is because they say, how come I can't have this if all those people can have those signs? If you're concerned about clutter, let's figure out clutter. If you're concerned about them being worn, our ordinance already has a master section in it about them being worn and that they can be asked to remove one or take it out. Just think we're trying, if we need to address the ordinance, I think we need to look at the whole thing. But picking out, and the last page has some samples of feather flags. You can see on that apartment complex, they have a pair, which is not uncommon, and they just say welcome, and it helps draw attention to the sign next to the gas station, which has lots of signs itself. And then there's just a sample of a single one for a juice bar company that has, I've seen them in a couple of locations. To address that, I have on the front of that packet, to address that issue and a couple other ones that I did send over the first time that really did not get addressed in the amendments. The first 2 amendments, number 1 and 2 on that front page, have language that say for both residential and for non-residential that the ordinance would allow up to 2 freestanding pole and fabric signs, poles not to exceed 12 feet, and fabric not to exceed 2.5 feet by 10 feet. That's a pretty standard sign for a feather flag. Based on what Mr. Fyander has advised us, the only reason that those people got written up in the first place is that we just had never expected them in our ordinance, and so the regular traditional sign sizes didn't work when somebody went out and looked at them. That simple exception would clearly identify that type of flag and its composition and should be easy to enforce. The third amendment that I would propose has to do with that 30-day versus actual time period. I think I understand why the staff inserted the 30 days, but I would put back the old language so that our language about freestanding signs says that they can be displayed only for a period of time not to exceed 30 consecutive days or the duration of the event or activity, and shall be removed immediately after the event or activity concludes. Such signs can be displayed only 2 times a year. I think that resolves the disconnect on events. I asked, as I did my due diligence on this, about the construction signs. That was one of the issues I'd raised before. The language in the ordinance wasn't changed. So what it says, as proposed by staff, is that there could not be more than one small yard sign on any residential property or on any commercial property. The issue that we'd raised was, well, if you've got somebody who's building a home and you've got the heating and air conditioning guy and the plumbing guy and the roofing guy, and they each have their little sign and they can only have it while they're doing the work on the house, could we have language that said they could have it while they're there? That language was accommodated, but the limit of 1 was there. When I inquired today, the answer was that legal said it would be okay to have 1 sign per contractor or 1 sign per candidate for elections. That really wasn't clear, and our goal is to make this so that the average person can read it and figure out what they can do and self-police. That was a really good message from staff, so I would suggest adding just the language that says duration and number, and that says 1 sign per event, contractor, or candidate is allowed, to just clarify that to readers and for enforcement. And then the last item, I searched to see why it didn't get changed, but there is a fair amount of language that staff added so that if somebody doesn't have right-of-way and they're putting a sign out, for instance, downtown on a wide sidewalk, to get it back from the curb and not put it in the walkway and all those sorts of things. But it did not address the fact that we need to make sure we don't put signs out in the sight triangles on the corners where people are walking and turning. And so I simply suggested that we add simple language that just, in addition to the other requirements, says the sign does not obstruct traffic sight distance triangles discussed in TMC 12.20.020, which is where our code suggests that.
Ms. Hiller, does this address the comments made by the downtown group that sent materials to us?
Yes, it does. The comments that they made and their suggested limitations on the size of sign and how many you could have would be covered by these amendments.
All right.
It does.
Okay. So, council members, we do not have a motion on the floor to adopt the ordinance as is, to make corrections or to make adjustments to it. So, council members, you have a recommendation in handling this. It bothers me that we as a body start writing legislation here, making a lot of changes, and thus we look at the whole picture. So a concern I have is if we go in that direction, maybe this should be sent, someone needs to look at this with all of these amendments before we rewrite it here tonight as a body. Ms. Hiller?
Given that, and I appreciate that feedback, I would be happy to suggest to consult with legal on how much time they might need to look at it and suggest a deferral if
throw that out as a suggestion for consideration. Mrs. Ortiz?
Motion to defer 2 weeks.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we defer action on this ordinance as it is for 2 weeks. Is that legal? Is that an appropriate way that we would handle it? That does not take, I mean, that's taking consideration, we would take, I guess, take in consideration what has been discussed here this evening during that 2-week interval. Mr. Colson?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Since we're taking this route, and I certainly support that, I think in addition to having conversation with legal, there are a lot of people, I think one of the frustrations that people have is they haven't been heard. And I would, if we're going to wait 2 weeks, I think I'd rather defer it maybe for a little bit longer period of time so that we could engage in some conversation. Certainly, Gary and I had an opportunity to chat a little bit. I think we need to have a further conversation. I would like to ask for maybe 4 weeks to do this so we could engage in some conversations if we could.
So move.
Would that be, we'll make that we'll just make that the motion. Will be 4 weeks. That will be, we'll get to revisit this again in 4 weeks.
I think we had a motion. I'm happy to change my second.
Your second to that. So that's what the motion now is. And I want to just say something in passing, not is that this is for or against it. But I initiated conversations with several members of the Planning Commission in the last week. And it's easy to get the assumption that somebody out there is out to get the banner flags, or that this is a sort of a behind-the-scenes effort that someone is deliberately trying to do. And I know, and I got the material, the Planning Commission has dealt with this in 6 meetings. They had 2 public hearings. They had 2 question and answer sessions. They contacted 32 feather flag businesses for their question and answer sessions. They sent it to the NAs and NIA presidents and vice presidents, and it went before the Citizen Advisory Council. So I say that in a sense, defending our Planning Commission, which is a group of volunteers who meet and deliberated this for over 6 months. And we have a policy before us. And not that we can't change it here. We have certainly that right to do. But just to give the whole picture is there's an plot out here to get rid of something, but all of these hearings, they've spent hours and hours on it. And they give their best effort. And I want to acknowledge the efforts of the Planning Commission and what they have done. And now we will look at it and give it our best efforts and interests. So if there's other discussion, if not.
Very quickly.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Hiller.
I really appreciate, City Manager, your suggestion. One of the things that I appreciated that they took the effort to get hold of all of the vendors for the hearings, but there wasn't a corresponding effort to get hold of all the businesses who had all this big variety of flags. And I hope that we can target those businesses who have this variety of covered and not covered signs and really engage in a good discussion. Because I think part of the problem was with the best of intentions. We were picking out one piece instead of looking at the whole. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I'm looking at the proposed amendments, and also at the original proposal from the planning department. And it seems to me like we're trying to legislate style or taste in these, which is not something that I'm, particularly fond of. But, and I may be wrong on this, but if we just remove the height requirement for these, if you look at the proposed amendment is not to exceed 2.5 by 10 feet, which is 25 square feet. The previous one was 32 square feet. Would it not be easier for all parties involved, and I wouldn't mind getting the opinion of the Planning Commission on this, to just say a square footage and let people have their signs however, in whatever shapes or designs they want, and we just say nothing to exceed 32 square feet, and then all of the rest of this goes away.
Well, I think that's something that going back in the next 4 weeks, they can take that type of information into consideration. Ms. Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a real quick question on the lines 283 to 284 that talks about elections and one sign per event. I know, not so much in city races, but in other races at the state or county level, we have some candidates that put more than one sign out at a location. Is that addressed in this? Is it just one sign now, if that goes through, I mean, if that's what the recommendation is? So, thank you.
Okay, I think again, if that can be addressed. Right now, we have a motion to defer this action on this ordinance for 4 weeks. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no. I vote yes.
Ms. Ortiz? I cleared the board. We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the ordinance is deferred. We go to item 6B, the ordinance on the Transit Authority.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson relating to Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority, granting a franchise to operate a bus system within the limits of the City of Topeka, prescribing the terms thereof and relating thereto pursuant to the provisions of KSA 12-2001 at SEEK, and specifically repealing ordinance number 16640, final reading.
Mr. Colson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Mary Feeney to provide information and answer any questions on this.
A franchise is simply permission for a utility or a bus company in this regard to use our streets. The TMTA's 20-year franchise is expiring next month, so this essentially is a renewal for another 20 years of the bus's franchise and their ability to operate their buses on our streets. And I believe the executive director, Ms. Duffy, is here if you have any specific questions concerning TMTA or of me.
Okay, thank you. Council members, do you have questions? Mr. Schmidt?
I move to approve.
Okay, it's been, Mr. Schmidt moves to approve the ordinance. Is there a second? Mr. Harmon seconds. Discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no. I vote yes.
10 yes.
And having voted yes, the ordinance is adopted. Go to new business, 7A, labor agreement.
A is approval of a one-year labor agreement between the City of Topeka and the Water Division, Council 72, Local 1294, Kansas Public Employees Union, AFSCME, AFLO-CIO.
Mr. Colson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Carol Foreman, Assistant City Attorney, to provide information on this labor agreement and answer any questions.
And this was presented in a work session, was it
Yes,
not?
I presented it 2 weeks ago on the 10th of September. So I'll just quickly refresh people's,
We can see, are there questions, since we had a
Okay.
public, it was at a public meeting, public hearing? Are there questions for Mrs. Foreman? If not, what is your pleasure? Mr. Campos moves to approve. Mr. Leisler seconds. Is there discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes. Ms.
9
Schwartz.
having voted yes, the labor agreement is approved. Thank you for your presentation. Item B has been removed, was pulled, so we go to item C, applications, and I believe there are some this evening.
Yes, there is one application for shortstop number 3 located at 2044 Northwest Tyler Street for a cereal malt beverage application. We're requesting approval.
That is the application. Your pleasure. Mr. Schmidt moves to approve the application. Is there a second? Ms. Delisla seconds. Discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the application is approved. We go to the zoning ordinance on in 8A. If the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located between Southeast 25th Street and Southeast 27th Street, east of Southeast California Avenue from C2 Commercial District, C4 Commercial District, M2 Multiple Family Dwelling District, R1 Single Family Dwelling District, PUD Planned Unit Development District, M2 Use Group, all to PUD Planned Unit Development District, C2 Commercial and C4 Commercial Use Groups. Final reading.
Thank you. Mr. Coulson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Approval would allow for the construction of a 160,000 square foot Walmart Supercenter located near Southeast 25th Street in Southeast California. I'd like to ask Mr. Fyander, Planning Director, to provide information to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, this is a Walmart requesting a PUD planned unit development at Southeast California and Southeast 25th, just south of the Highland Park High. It also includes a one outlot on that faces Southeast California for future development. As presented, this PUD plan is a culmination of a 7-month collaborative process between the neighborhood residents, Walmart, and staff to come to this conclusion. All the off-site and on-site improvements, infrastructure-wise, will be at Walmart's developer's cost. It will not be at any cost to the city. Some of the more significant features that we have here, the going in, would be a new traffic signal at their entrance on California, which is approximately at Southeast 27th. All traffic signals from Southeast 29th to Southeast 25th would be synchronized, including their new signal. This will greatly improve the flow of traffic in the area, and that comes at a cost of about $30,000 per signal. Considerable investment. They've agreed to widen California between Southeast 25th down to Southeast 27th from 4 lanes to 5 lanes, add pedestrian crosswalks across California as well as Southeast 25th. There are 2 bike racks, bike parking, as well as a bus stop internal to the sites. For the Metro, they're going to be relocating their bus shelter on Southeast 25th to in front of the store. That's a major change of improvement. And then lastly, you have a 9-foot tall berm in the back of the building, screened with evergreens to buffer the residential area, and a 6-foot tall black chain link fence around the perimeter of the property. These are all things that we worked through the process to get to this point. Everybody had a collaborative effort here, and Planning Commission ended up recommending approval unanimously. And so we do ask for a motion to approve the ordinance and approve the PUD.
And just to clarify, I think, and you made the comment, but all of those street improvements, traffic lights, et cetera, will be paid for by Walmart.
That's correct. Yes.
Everything in the widening the street, all aspects of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It will be at their cost, and obviously we would end up with the maintenance cost. Okay.
And Council, this is, again, it's a zoning issue, so there is no public comment. We're sitting in a judicial capacity. Mrs. Everhart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a welcome addition to the east side of town. It's in my district, so I would just like to make the motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Everhart, second by Mrs. Ortiz to approve the ordinance. Is there discussion? Mrs. Heller?
Really not a question, but a compliment to you and to everyone who was involved in this negotiation. It sounds like you worked out a lot of the things that often we've overlooked when a big development is coming in, and you've done them up front, which is really great. And aside from the islands and the crossing the street, the one piece that stuck out the most to me was the bus shelter located at the store. That's been a problem with other Walmarts before, the access for public transit, and I just think that's a wonderful development.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Manspeaker?
I'm really torn with this issue. I understand the need for a grocery store on that side of town. Obviously, there's not been one there in quite some time. I know when I lived over in Oakland, we used to shop at the Food for Less on 6th Street. I believe it closed probably 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. My concerns are a a little bit bigger than just access to groceries. My concerns specifically are with Walmart and their practices as an employer and as a corporation in America. Specifically, the numerous wage and hour violations that are charged against them, violations or working conditions that are less than tolerable for most of their employees, the fact that only 44% of their employees have access to company health care, a number of their employees end up on government subsidies so that they're able to survive. So when we get offered these 200 to 250 new jobs, what we really need to realize is that we're adding 200 to 250 new people to the roles of what we need to subsidize and take care of in terms of not being able to make ends meet. I understand access or food deserts. I understand access to groceries and things like that for neighborhoods that are left behind or forgotten. But the reality is that I feel like Walmart is the cause of these food deserts and not the solution. What has happened over the last 20 years that I've lived in Topeka, or the last 36 years I've lived in Topeka, but since Walmart's been here, I've watched mom and pop stores close, local grocers close, move out of small neighborhoods. You used to have small neighborhood grocery stores. Those cannot compete against these big competitors. So we've watched the market cannibalize itself to the point that we exist at now, which is only a few handful of grocery stores to choose from, which don't give our citizens, I feel like, a quality selection. There are corporations who have chosen to act differently than Walmart, that have chosen to pay their employees well, that have chosen to restrict corporate profits. In 2010, the CEO of Walmart earned more in 1 hour than most employees did. So this is the reality that we're living in. This is the good neighbor that we're inviting into our community. I don't know that they are a good neighbor, and I don't know that Topeka benefits by having a fourth Walmart. I actually feel like it will be to our detriment. I will not be supporting this, not because I'm opposed to groceries for folks in the east side of town, but I am opposed to worsening their living conditions and the living conditions of those who will choose to work at the Walmart. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there other discussion, comments? Mrs. Ortiz?
Thank you. About 4 years ago, we had a East Topeka Summit, and that's when our other city manager was there, and we put a summit together that we talked about the need over there, and it was amazing to me at that particular time when I attended that Oakland doesn't have a store, East Topeka doesn't have a store, Shawnee Heights area doesn't have a store, Tecumseh doesn't have a store, and I'm trying to think who else. It was someone else out the lake area. So that's who this Walmart will be benefiting. So I'm going to approve this much-needed store. And it was amazing that people talked about how they would leave town on their way home between here and Lawrence and go to the store on 6th and Carnahan, the Food for Less that went out of business. And it is a mom and pop shop, but that's not why they went out of business. They went out of business because that landlord tripled their rent because he's seen the need there, the much needed need. And that's why they went out of business, and that's why they're engaged, because they can afford that facility. So I think this is a win-win situation for everyone. Everybody doesn't like to go to Dillon's. Everybody doesn't. There's stuff I buy at Dillon's that I don't buy at Walmart. And we're losing some retail for the people out at the lake to Lawrence area because they said they just assume drive to that area. So I think there is a need here. I think it's a win-win for the low to moderate income kids that can't take the bus clear across town. And I think Ms. Duffy's done a wonderful job at rerouting, and she had the bus free all summer so kids could get to their jobs at no cost. And I thought that was awesome. But now they can walk to that Walmart. They can get out of school and they can walk across the street and they can provide for their families or help provide for their families. I see people walk all over from Highland Park Apartments to Pine Ridge Apartments, and they can walk. They can walk to work. and they can walk home, or even just walk and get their groceries. And that's what I'm looking at, that they can use it as a second job, use it as their main job, but just the things that they're going to bring into our community. You know, I had somebody tell me, well, if we open this Walmart, they're going to close down for stealing. They steal all over town. You know, that's not a reason for us not to have this. East Topeka residents, and they took all of our zip codes, and they checked out where they were buying from, and that's how these big businesses come in. But until we pour in millions of infrastructure in, because we don't have it further east, like towards the Tecumseh area, and until we're able to do that, we can't talk to people and sell them to come into our area. Because the chamber, they also did something that was $3.4 million with the sewers, the infrastructure, and all of that. So I think this is a win-win. I will support it wholeheartedly, and hope that other people will see that it's an area that people will appreciate stores and business like that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Mrs. Schwartz.
Real quick, I see this and I see jobs, 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 and that's what we need in Topeka, is developing more jobs. I also see from the pictures beautification and things that are going to be improved in East Topeka. I have kids that go to grandkids that go to Shawnee Heights School, and I think, you know, they all need more jobs to be able to apply for, and it will help East Topeka. So I do support it.
Is there other discussion or comments? Mr. Schmidt?
I'm not going to support this, largely for reasons that were already addressed here. But as for a greater economic development philosophy, and I think Councilman Manspeaker touched on it. When we bring these kinds of jobs into town, we're saying jobs, jobs, jobs. These are jobs that are going to be making $8 an hour, which means these are jobs, jobs, jobs that are also going to be on government assistance, because people making $8 an hour aren't going, this is where all of our resources come from. This is all of the cuts that we had to make during the budget process come because we have economic development that's focusing on creating jobs that are not sustainable. And I'm conflicted because there is a great need for this over there. There's a great need for an organization that pays better to provide this. But I can't support what I believe is going to be an addition of jobs that are not economically beneficial to the city.
Thank you. Is there other discussion or comments? Mr. Campos.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll go ahead and support this. I've seen that it's right across the street from my old high school. It's going to ultimately increase the social economics of the area. And you, Councilman Schmidt and Councilman Manspeaker speak about jobs, but they forgot to mention all the union jobs it's going to take to build the bad boy. Talking about pipe fitters, electricians, drywallers, people who lay concrete. Not only are you going to have the jobs that work inside of the store, but you also have to create the jobs to build the darn place. Second to that, it's important for the area. You know, there used to be a Fowley's and a Food for Less at 29th in California. And in Oakland, there is Mike's IGA, and there used to be an Ika's, which I would regularly go to, on a daily basis. No doubt this is an issue. You know, we are a corporate society. Without doubt, and the corporations play a very important part in our lives. They're everywhere. You know, they're absolutely everywhere. The issue in regards to Walmart and the unfairness that it provides to people through not a living wage, I understand that, but it's a start. And I think this area really needs this, and I will support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Manspeaker.
Just for clarity, the last time we approved a store like this, it was Menards. And the gentleman from Menards stood in front of us and told us that most of the jobs building the Menards store would be local jobs. I did follow up on that. There were a lot of communications back and forth with the city and I about the workers on that job, the majority of whom were not from the city of Topeka. The license plates from the contractors were all from the Johnson County and Jackson, Missouri, or the Jackson County, Missouri license plates. So there was a lot of Kansas City folks. Typically, an organization like Walmart, when they build a store like this, they have crews that travel over the country. They're not local contractors. There's no agreement about the wages that will be paid to build this store. There's no base level agreement, and that's the reality of Walmart. They're cannibals. That's all there are. They're here to leech off of our community. That's why I oppose it.
Mrs. Everhart?
Well, I think this has been good discussion, and while I think everyone knows I am just as concerned as some of my colleagues as to the issue of fairness in wages and the fact that that needs to be addressed. That's really not what this issue is today. A lot of the wage issues, we need to do a better job with our Congress in the sense of looking at what minimum wage is, but that's not an issue the city council can address. So while I don't disagree with those comments, what I want people to focus on is we have an underserved area of town where we desperately need. I mean, we have a Dillon, so I don't want people to be misled that there's no grocery over there. There is a Dillon store. It's not been upgraded yet. We're still waiting. It's supposed to be, but hasn't. But we need those jobs, and we need the ability. I have a lot of people who live in my district who don't even have a car. And the ability to walk or get to the facility to purchase what they need, they need this. This is, we're talking about people who it's high time that we have something on that side of town and in that area. So while I certainly understand the discussion, I don't want to derail a project that is so needed in that part of town for a greater issue which this body can't address. And so I sympathize with that issue and know that it's something that, really the state, this country should look at, but, the fairness in wages. But that's not what we're asking here. This is a zoning issue, and whether or not we're going to grant the approval based on the fact that they have worked hard with our neighborhoods. And so I would just ask people to support this. It's greatly needed, and the issue that we're looking at on zoning really doesn't address the other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Isla.
I agree with Ms. Everhart. The one thing that excites me about this prospect is the fact that we have a high school right there. And one of the things that we sorely need is for our young people to have job opportunities. Although I do not agree with the labor wages that are provided through this corporation, because I significantly do not agree, and with the fact that there is no health insurance coverage for most of the employees. At the same time, for kids that are trying to get that first job, for people that are trying to get that first experience, it's a wonderful opportunity. And that's one thing that I don't want us to miss. I think about the need in the area. I was a resident of that area at one point in time. And although I have my discrepancy with the wages, I do have to think of what the greater good is for the community, and I will support this.
Okay, is there other discussion? We have a motion to approve the zoning, the ordinance. All those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 8 yes, Manspeaker and Schmidt voting no.
8 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Next, we proceed with first readings. The clerk will read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson granting to Westar Energy Incorporated an electric franchise, including the right to construct, operate, and maintain electric transmission, distribution, and street lighting facilities within the corporate limits of the City of Topeka, Kansas, and specifically repealing ordinance number 18297, first reading. B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning the concessions and admission fees at the Topeka Zoo, amending City of Topeka Code sections 1135-010, 1135-040, 1135-050, 1135-060, and 1135-080, and specifically repealing said original sections as well as repealing section 1135-070, first reading.
Thank you. We will proceed with the presentations. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. as was evident tonight, we deal with a lot of challenges and a lot of issues and often some great discussion. It's difficult to do what we do, and sometimes we experience sleepless nights, but sometimes we have opportunities for fun. And I just wanted to recognize the rail ceremony that happened last Wednesday at 8th and Kansas. There was a need from an engineering perspective as part of the Kansas Avenue project to look underground and look at the old rail line, trolley line that existed running down Kansas Avenue. So instead of just doing going out at night and digging it up and taking a look at it, staff put together a really great event, and hopefully people had an opportunity to participate in it. You really got an opportunity to look at history. And they dug it up. You saw the rail lines, you saw the old Topeka bricks, which Mr. Mize once has presented. Over here, there was an opportunity to interact with people who were just milling about. And there was a lot of period costumes and music and activities. And it really was one of the most enjoyable days, that opportunities or things that I did since I've been here. It really was a great time. And then also this Saturday, we have the Zubilee, Saturday evening. The zoo is a point of great pride in this community, and the partnership that has existed for a very long time between the city and the Friends of the Zoo has led to just a great experience. And this opportunity that is happening this evening, Saturday evening, and other events during the year are just a great opportunity for people to enjoy Topeka and have pride in Topeka. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt? Thank you. Mr. Harmon? Mrs. Hiller?
I have one regarding the Economic and Community Development Committee. I wanted to thank Deputy Mayor Ortiz for convening that committee. It was convened in particular because out of our budget process, there was a charge to delegate to a committee of the council recommendations regarding specifics on the 2013 allocations for social services. We did meet yesterday. Was it yesterday? Just yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, it seemed long ago. We began the process of the comprehensive review of social services funding, which is part of the charge that came out of the Budget Committee's process as well. We did vote to recommend to the council that the 2013 funding levels, both for general fund and for CDBG, social service block grant agencies, carry forward for the 2014 allocations. We will have that I wanted to report to you now because there was a goal of getting that done by September the 30th. And my understanding is that staff has put that together in a document that we can, with the city manager's assistance, get on the agenda next week for the council's approval.
Thank you. Mr. Campos? Mrs. Ortiz?
I just want to thank that group. First, I want to apologize to the group. I got busy and Jenny kept hounding me, and I've been in training and brain dead, so I apologize for throwing that together so quickly, and I appreciate your timeliness on that. Thank you.
Mrs. Everhart?
Thank you. Just real quickly, there was unfortunately, for those patrons of the Topeka Steakhouse, you know that's closed. That's not in my district, obviously that's out in the county. But I did have the privilege of doing a ribbon cutting for a restaurant in my district, Lane's at 3800 Southeast Michigan. So they will fill your need if you need steak. They are steak, barbecue, and seafood, and they are located inside the American Legion, which has been there for some time at 3800 Southeast Michigan. I'll say that again. So they're going to serve dinner and lunch, and Thursday nights they're going to have a mystery dinner theater. So I think it's real exciting. Things are happening in that district, and so I hope that you all will patronize that so that can make a good run. Thanks.
Mrs. DeLisla? Mr. Manspeaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, the argument that certain things are not the responsibility of this council, to me, is a bit of a cop-out. The reality is that we are the elected leaders of this city, and we get to choose the direction for our community, and that means that we can choose it in lots of very creative ways. And I think one of those that's incredibly important is to build an extremely strong and boisterous local economy. so that when larger, more massive changes happen at the national level or the international level, they don't necessarily affect the economy that we have within our own city limits. We all have an opportunity to make that growth happen. We have many avenues to make it happen on. I would just encourage my colleagues to explore those avenues and not just be stuck on the next flashy and glittery thing. I'd like to give congratulations to my neighborhood, College Hill, which was recognized by this old house as one of the nicest old house neighborhoods in the Midwest. If you know my neighborhood very well, you can typically buy a house for an extremely reasonable price and put a significant amount of investment into said old house and watch your investment triple and sometimes quadruple. So the reality is that it's a very stable neighborhood. We know it and love it. That's why we live there. I know that my neighbors know it and love it, and we're glad to see that we got some national attention for it. And then I would echo everybody else's comments about Zoobilee on Saturday night. It's the largest fundraiser for our zoo that is hosted every year, and judging by the magnificent plans that we saw in the work session, the zoo has lots of dreams, and helping fund those dreams is not just the responsibility of the citizens or the city of Topeka, but it is also the responsibility of those who are willing to donate and give their time and money to the city or to the zoo. So please, if you can attend, I welcome it. And I would be remiss if I did not point out that we continue to pay supervisors at the fire department overtime wages, and a practice that will continue until November while we are in desperate search for money all the time. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, Jerry Seinfeld was awesome on Thursday night, and the house seemed like it was packed. I was so interested when I went by many people and saw that they had shirts on from Junction City or Manhattan. I think we have a draw here in Topeka that we can continue to do that. The Jazzing It Up downtown was also awesome. I wish the turnout would have been better, but one of my constituents, Vince Fry, did an awesome job of getting that done. And then last week I showed this huge map of my district with all the subdivisions, and Doug Whitaker has been able to get that even better. You don't have to pay $10 to get it from the county. You can get a PDF version of it, of your district, and you just, click your control and mouse and make it large. You can see and read all of it. So, and the last thing is that Karen and I will be doing a coffee and commentary at PT's, and I really appreciate Jenny and Susie, getting that on the city website. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 persons signed up for public comment tonight. The first is Bob Snyder. And Bob, it says here, Highland Acres. I know you and your wife are leaders in that NIA for a number of years. I acknowledge your good leadership there.
All right. I am Bob Schneider, and I'm the current awareness team leader for Highland Acres NIA and a past president. I thank you, Mayor Wolgast. I thank you, City Council, for your affirmative action tonight dealing with the PUD for Walmart. I thank you, City Manager Colson, in your planning department, Bill Fiander, Annie Driver, Bill Hoover. And I thank Ryan Ersick of Walmart Corporate, and also Shannon McCarno with the Walmart Legal Counsel. And a very special thanks to the residents of the neighborhood, both renters and owners, who along with the Highland Park High School and individual businesses participated in what was truly a neighborhood effort. My dad taught me years ago that if you gave thanks, you better say why. If not, just go on and eat the meal. Well, I gave thanks, and so I'm going to say why. In the planning department, Bill Hoover, who was in contact with us within hours of the April announcement, he stayed with us and kept us informed as an NIA and as a group of what was going on before the official Walmart PUD was submitted. For Annie Driver, who was our go-to person once the PUD was delivered. And Annie was professional, she was extremely helpful, and she even brought her toddler to one of our meetings in August because on a time-sensitive deal, on her time. So thank you, Annie. To City Manager, your newly implemented neighborhood meeting requirements allows communication and resolution of neighborhood concerns before planning and the zoning final meeting. This has been a great addition to nip the gossip, to promulgate the facts, and to relay our concerns. To Ryan Ersick with Walmart, who has been indispensable in not only saying but proving with actions that Walmart truly desires to be a good neighbor, and especially to the neighborhood. This special night would not be the same if it wasn't for the active participation of the residents and the organizations of our neighborhood. My position here is to be a mouthpiece of our association, the scene that gets the behind the scenes that gets the job done goes to those too numerous to mention. And we got one member who would say tonight, Bob Aslan, we did it. Governing body, Walmart's success and multi-million-dollar commitment will be the keystone in revitalizing our community. Even before the first shovel of dirt is turned, it has given our area one most important commodity, and that's the commodity of hope. And that hope is felt all through the community. And upon the heels of hope comes pride. And that is also an important commodity that is in. Governing body, look for the renewed spirit by the neighborhoods to decrease the blight and to increase the beautification. You will be a very important part of that process. But rest assured, you won't do it alone. You'll have the organizations and the community behind you. I respectfully request another 3 minutes.
Oh, that's, okay.
I don't think it'll take me that long, but.
Okay, Mrs. Everhart.
Yeah, I would move to allow another 3 minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to allow an extra 3 minutes. Discussion, all those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 yes.
Thank
It is
you.
approved. Please continue.
Well, this project has been a great learning process for everyone involved. As always, we should be able to learn from the process, to evaluate where changes could be made for the better. Our present zoning, we'd like to bring one suggestion. Our present zoning does not require a CPTED evaluation. CPTED is the acronym for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, and it is highly endorsed by Chief Miller. We ask the council to direct the planning department to investigate and design an ordinance to require a CPTED evaluation as part of the process for future businesses. I can tell you that Walmart worked greatly with our NIA and on CPTED. They were well familiar with CPTED because it's required in many communities, and they did it at very significant expense to themselves from their original plan. With the process, there was also a disappointment. And that disappointment was that there was little or no input from the 3 other notified neighborhood associations. The reason was given by their leadership to myself was that Walmart wasn't geographically located within their boundaries. Now, I don't know how many of you know of Zig Ziglar, but in Zig's words, this is stinking thinking. You see, rest assured that whatever happens in our neighborhood affects all the other neighborhoods. So rest assured that we will, as an NIA, be right involved with anything that affects our neighborhood, even if its geographical boundaries are someplace else. The motto of Highland Acres NIA is together we can do it. We don't see this only within our organization membership, our geographical boundaries, but as a motto that should encompass the entire community and other organizations also. To our fellow associations, I implore you to shed your blinders and envision the entire area so we can grow together. Let us work together, and together we can bring pride and progress back to East Topeka. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. The next person to speak is Rosetta Prawl.
Thank you. I am a representative not only of our NIA, because I'm on that board, but I'm also a representative of Colonial Park Townhouses, which I'm on their board. And we do appreciate y'all very much in approving this. This is a great opportunity for our neighborhood, for the kids in our neighborhood to have a place to go and get a job and try to help their families. Some of these people, it will help them, irregardless of other people's opinion, it will help them get off of welfare. If they have a place where they can walk to work and get a job, it will help them. And it will help them gain experience to get a better job in the future. I personally want to thank all of you for your input and for your support in our neighborhood. East Topeka needs it desperately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cullop. Next speaker is David Cullop.
Hi, it's a little cold in here. I'm shaking a little bit. My name is David Cullop, and I'm here tonight to remind you guys that we still need that sidewalk and to take issue with the NIA for not getting a hold of anybody across the river and their district on their side of town. They say they represent everybody, but for me, it seems like they just represent a few select individuals instead of the entire neighborhood. You got a community full of at least 30 disabled people right there in that community, none of whom have been notified, and most of which feel left out of almost the entire process. I've been vocal throughout this whole thing, from the first Walmart meeting they had at the school, through every zoning meeting, which I was rudely disrespected, interrupted, and made to feel like I didn't matter publicly right here in this room, to the point where I called my lawyer and discussed with him possible lawsuits, to which he told me he couldn't take the case because his wife worked for the city and referred me to somebody else. Now, when John Campos heard about that, he called me. Thank you for that, by the way. And calmed me down and talked to me, made me feel like a person, made me feel like I mattered, made me feel like I had a voice, got me here so I can represent my group, my community, and my area. And I feel like I'm doing a lot better job than most people. And I don't understand why they're not reaching out to my community, my group, why we're being left out of a Walmart that will save us money. By the way, I make less than $1,000 a month. That, Dylan's, is sky high when it comes to food prices, man. That will save me at least $200-300 just in food costs alone. So when you tell me it's not going to help, that Walmart's going to help. Not only that, it will bring in outside economic interest because this area is being developed. And it's being shown that Topeka wants to grow instead of being stagnant. Now, outside interest will take a look at this and say, hey, once this area starts to grow, why don't we invest in this area, in this community? We can bring in money. I have so many business ideas that could increase that side of town. I mean, Whataburger, right there. One franchise, best hamburger franchise I've ever had. Bam. Money. So, that's all I have to say. I just wish the city of Topeka would work better on these projects, with my community especially, than what it has been doing. Now, those like Ms. Everhart, Campos, Hiller, and others, Michelle DeLisa, have been excellent and wonderful, and actually have made me feel like I'm a person, like they care. And that's important to me. That's important to my community. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cullop, for sharing your views with us. Next is Joseph Ledbetter.
governing body. I'm going to change the topic a little bit. I did hear, though, that Walmart is going union. I'm kidding. Okay. I want to talk about some tax relief for small business people, small businessmen and women that are paying stormwater tax. Yes, I've talked about it before, and I'm going to talk about it again tonight. We just had a lot of taxes raised on the small businesses of this community in August. Franchise, rate fees, property taxes, and all those are going to hit next year, just like they hit last year when we raised taxes last year. And I know some people thought we didn't, but we did. The thing about stormwater that's really kind of odd is when you're taxing gravel or charging for gravel and calling it impervious, it's really kind of like a lie because it's not impervious. And that's in the definition of the ordinance. I've discussed this before. And I think a dishonest scale is wrong. It teaches that in the Bible. And I think to charge people for something that simply runs into the ground and is very difficult to measure. I could probably show you several properties very close to the downtown that are being charged a lot of money for stormwater. These are businesses that at least half of the gravelled area is grass and dirt, and there's no way it's gravel. There might be a few pieces of gravel in it, but you've got city people that are saying, well, that whole thing's gravel. And it's impossible to measure by any economic standard that would be easy to ascertain. I mean, yeah, we could go out and measure each piece of gravel, but that'd be astronomical if we did it with engineers. So it's really something that needs to be reformed. There's still unequal enforcement. You have contractors that work with the city that are may have as much as 2 blocks that are under gravel, and they're being charged for the price of a house. Then you have other people that might have gotten crosswise with the last mayor, and their lots are being charged astronomical numbers when you actually look at how much gravel they have in those lots. In fact, I just can't find a dumber ordinance the way it's written. It's just something that, at least several of my clients are just very disgusted with, and they want to know why this hasn't been changed. Now, it's not that we don't have money in that fund, because I've looked at the money that's been taken in, and there's a huge surplus of money. And I'm being told that to take the gravel off, which affects a lot of small business people, would cost about $400,000 a year. And yet, the money being taken in on that tax far, far exceeds that $400,000. So what I'm proposing is that we get moving on this ordinance and delete gravel as being impervious, which it's not, and leave it simply at roofs, asphalt, and concrete, which is very easy to ascertain, very easy to measure. You can do it with aerial photographs, not with gravel. It's not the same, and in fact, I had the counsel for the city, our attorney, go down and look at one of the lots a couple weeks ago, and he said, this is all dirt. I said, I know, but my client's being charged for an impervious surface because they claim there's gravel. So he took it off the list. But you shouldn't have to hire an attorney to get something that simple fixed from the city of Topeka. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter, for your comments. Seeing no other further business, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Campos. I was said that the person who was Carrie Strahler is here. Thank you. Was not here earlier. She is a new member of the Disabilities Act Advisory Council. Thank you for coming. And Council, then that's for you for your good service. Thank you. We are adjourned.